Gander in January of 1948 had bounced around several foster homes that didn't get along with me, which I couldn't figure out that one. But one of them I ran away from, one up in Danby. I might mention that house is no longer even there, that one, which was, I was going to have to go to a school in Danby itself. It was a 3 or 4 story building, yellow, ugly. Maybe that was one of the reasons I ran away from that place. But at any rate, let me get back to you. As I said, several of those homes, and I didn't agree. They shipped me over here after a fellow I once knew in one of the other homes was able to go back to his parents in Owego. That was Albert Ellis. I came here in January of '48. The very first night that I was here, Roy and Georgia Coursen apologized after supper. Roy was the patron of the Masonic Lodge. Georgia was the secretary. They had to go to those meetings, and they did. And Roy says, "Hey, I'm sorry, but prowl around the house. Go wherever you want. Take a look at whatever you want. And at 9 o'clock you should go to bed because we do chores early in the morning." Well, as I say, I had been to several dairy farms before, and I understood that. The next day, Roy had several questions. "Jimmy, if you smoke, that's all right with me. I smoke, but I smoke in the house, not in the barn. If you smoke, please smoke in the house. Don't smoke in the barn." Well, I told Roy, "Gee, I don't smoke and I don't intend to. Cigarettes and stuff like that cost money." And I didn't have much. And we went down to the barn, and one of the first things he did was swept off the floor, and he had a pail of wine that we spread over the floor. He says, "Whatever you do, whenever you start a job like this, we're going to start milking shortly, make sure you have a clean surface to work on. Your work will go a lot easier." And of course he was right. The lime, of course, we swept into the drop, and it finally went out in the hay fields, and that worked along. That was all well and good. Later on that evening after supper, I said, "Roy, I noticed in your office you have several guns, and one of them's a .22. Come next spring, could I borrow that gun and go hunt woodchucks?" I tell you, I was really wrapped up in hunting, you know, when you're 13 years old. And Roy says, "Let's go in the office." Well, let me back up a minute. I should explain. Roy was a lawyer. He had graduated from Syracuse Law School in 1906. He came to Gander. He built a house just on Lower Spencer Avenue. And then it developed that he had, what is that?
Is that diabetes?
Huh?
Was that diabetes then?
Yeah, diabetes. And the doctor says, "You've got to find something else to do. I suggest you go into farming." It's quite an upheaval because he'd gone to college to learn to be a lawyer. Anyhow, he bought the farm where I am now in 1917. So he had been there a while. He still practiced law in a low we had a lot of law books there, but he had a couple of real nice books that I now have. They were about the Civil War. 2 books about that thick, written by, who wrote about the Civil War? Horace Greeley, I believe it was. And these are original volumes. I still have them. But anyhow, Roy and Georgia were in their 60s when I came on the farm. So I think he was about 62 or 3 then. he had diabetes. He wasn't in the best of health. I was sort of small, but I grew up fast. I really did. But back to his law office and the guns, he said, have a seat. Do you know anything at all about guns? Yes, sir. I was in the rifle club there, Merritt Valley School, and I learned how to shoot and how to care for guns and so forth. He picked that gun up and says, it's yours. So this is a kid that didn't have hardly the clothes on his back. I just, as I said in my memoirs here, the guy was actually about 5'6", 5'5". But in that instant, he became 6'6". I could not work hard enough for that. But anyhow, that was in January. It was winter. I should tell you this, when he showed me my bedroom upstairs, there was a heater in there. The house was steam heat, and that heater was warm. I had come from a place in Berkshire, up on the hill, where the wind actually blew the snow in beside the windows, and it made two pads. It literally did. And of course, I could stand in that bedroom there. I stripped buck naked, and I was comfortable. Oh, man. I really liked that. A little bit about Ryan, Georgia. They milked cows at 6 in the morning and 5 at night. That was, and you had supper at 6. It was, that's what you did, and that was almost like the Bible.
That was by hand, or?
No. We had about 25 head of Guernsey cattle. As you know, they're smaller than the average cow, a little bit bigger than a Jersey. The power for the barn down there, we had electricity, but to milk the cows, we had a pump set up here, and I had one of these pop-up engines. Every morning, when you went down there to milk, you put gas in the thing and made sure there was water, and then you put both of the valves, push them in like this, so you had no compression, so you get motion, get that thing going around, and let it go around, and let the valves out, and they pop, 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 and that was the power. There was one lever over here on this. It was like those old factories where you had these great big wheels and belts and all that. There was one that you pulled over here, and that brought the water from the well there into this great big tank. That was for the cows. Cows went outside if you had in the summer. It was sort of an old-fashioned way. I mean, we're talking 1948, 49 time frame. But that's the way Roy had always done it, and it worked. And that's all he had about a 1934 pickup truck of some indescribable, it was even raunchier than my Geo. That's what he hauled milk to milk station with, the creamery. We were to subsequently get a new Ford truck, 1948 Ford, brand new. I love that truck. Roy crumpled up the great fender on a telephone pole down there. And you wouldn't get it fixed, I had to hammer it out.
So there was no electricity in the barn?
There was electricity.
Oh, there was electricity in the barn.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now, as time went along, I sort of got on Roy about 19th century farming. I'll get into more of that a little later, because he did. Well, okay, I'll fast forward to the end of my freshman year. I shouldn't do that. I met a couple of guys down there in class, Doug and Dave Pheasant.
Oh, you poor fellow.
And a guy named Charlie Todd, Ivan Gillette, Harry Anderson, and the school here was a lot more lenient than the Merritt Valley School at that. I mean, the Merritt Valley School is strict and justifiably These are people sort of loose. Doug and Dave, we really had a ball. Got kicked out of school, but we get sent down to the principal's office for little things, you know. And we explained to the principal our new ideas for making money for our senior trip to Washington. We come up with some of the worst excuses for being there. They're good, they worked. I mean, that's all that counted. I'm sorry if I sort of ramble, but all these thoughts keep coming. My grades. And if any of you are in sociology whatsoever, I came from several places where I didn't really do too good in school. I came here, number one, they didn't even have a French teacher, so I didn't have to take French. I took that midterm exam over there in Merritt Valley 3 times. 3 times I got lower marks. So, my grades went up just like this. I began to understand algebra. And that's an accomplishment, because I was never really mathematically inclined. But I'll tell you, the home environment had such a lot to do with it. It was a different world, and this little boy responded differently. I learned very soon that if you were very good at whatever you did, you could get away with a lot. I did, and I got away with a lot. But I'll say this, I was one of the 4 people who got Regents diplomas. I was the only one in my senior year to get a Regents scholarship, which Roy talked me out of accepting because you don't need to go to college to be a farmer. So I didn't go to college. It's no big deal. Roy and Georgia, like I say, they had this philosophy, time for everything. I should describe a little bit about breakfast. Every Saturday, Georgia would make what she called crullers, donuts, on that old coal stove. And it worked real good in the winter. In the summer, it was something else. She used that coal stove in the summer too. But in this big pot, she'd make donuts. And I was the only boy there, and I got all the donut holes. You just can't get better than that. But every morning there's 2 eggs, 3 pancakes, coffee, and donuts. That's what you have for breakfast. And my golly, I ate them all, and so did Roy. And we prospered. Milk. After a while, I got pretty well into the role of things. We, as I say, had these Guernsey cattle, and they give a higher butterfat content in the milk. And for that reason, we took milk down to the creamy, sure, but we also took it to several houses in the village, people that wanted that Guernsey milk. And some people came up to our place to get the Guernsey milk. And I would have to stop whatever I was doing and pour them out milk. And one of them was our mail carrier, a fellow named Alan Ahern. And he would bring with him a carload of kids, you know. And so I would get the milk and send out, and those kids on the way. Well, one of them was that one right there. But it worked out pretty good. Roy's a good guy. He liked to go down to the milk creamery, drop the milk cans off. Now they'd have to go in, you'd empty out, and then they'd have to be cleaned, sterilized. And then they'd come out the other end, and you picked them up there. Well, it took time. Right across the road was the milk stream inn. And that's where Roy would generally wait for his milk cans. Sometimes he waited several hours. Poor George. She was such a jewel. And she held her patience with it. Those times she didn't. And I just don't know how she did that. Roy would get home real happy, she would be real unhappy. And I'd clear out, that's all there was to it. But anyway, they were sort of religious now. They were Masonic Lodge members, she the Eastern Star. She would go to church every Sunday, congregational church. Roy had made a habit of going to the church, but at some point in time, he took the steeple off the top because it was falling apart. And the church elders would not buy a new steeple. And Roy and several of the other members of the church fought with it incessantly, but it didn't do any good. And Roy said, well, if that's the way you're going to be, hell with it. And he never went to church after that. Georgia was I got to, because Doug and Dave were Methodists, and so was Alton Ahart and his kids. I started going to the Methodist church then, and they even started singing in the church choir. That was quite entertaining. That was very entertaining. The Methodist church. In the spring of the year up there, the hornets, bees would come out, you know, they'd wake up and they'd be flying around, they'd fly all over. This isn't about Roy and George, of course, this is about Jim Roberts. It was around Easter time, and there's some Christmas decorations, pine needles left over, which I had been breaking up with my fingers. During prayer, Marcia Ward sitting in front of me, and you know, her head's down like this, and the napier like this. And I just leaned forward, and oh my God, I dropped some of those needles on her back. And naturally, she screamed. Now, I want to tell you, I don't know how many of you people ever knew Minerva Ward. She was the organist. I got drilled so bad. I mean, she just, holy moly. I never did that again. But she talked to me afterwards too, and she was just a little bitty thing, but boy, she loved and the junior choir, they sat right across the other side of it. You know, those little girls. And I developed a habit of over my ears, getting those little girls laughing. And you know, everybody looking around who's little girls, of course, they're all grown women now. They still remember that, though. Okay, now I want to get back to Roy in Georgia. The spring of the year came. We did the fence fixing, and we cleared out that humongous pile of manure. Understand, when you cleaned the barn out, it had this bucket. You sort of put the manure in and you ran it out on this rail, and you dumped it out there, and that pile got pretty big. I'd hire, Roy and I would hire a fellow named John Whitney and Bert Ackla. These names aren't probably familiar with any, but they were a couple of local men. John Whitney was about 6 foot something high, handlebar mustache, big burly guy. Bert Ackley was about 5'4", skinny guy. But the two of them, those were the people we depended on to help us with our farming. So I'd hire them and they'd come down, load up take it out, spread the manure in the fields. That's another thing I want to touch on. As you were going west, you were fine, because the wind always comes from the west. But if you turn around and you turn around, the wind still comes from the west. It's not the best. Years later, down at IBM where I worked, I was trying to couple these guys and they said, oh man, what a day I've had. Oh, God almighty, I've never worked so hard in my life. And I looked at whoever might have been Butch, I don't know, looked at her and said, they don't know what is. Come summer, now we're starting to do the haying bed. We had a team of horses, Tom and Jerry. Roy had raised them from colts. Tom was sort of a gray, Jerry was black. they had different personalities. Jerry did not like to have a horse ahead of him, and Tom was always playing catch-up. And he just never could, and he finally developed heart problems. We had to have him done in, and I felt bad about that, but nevertheless, we went over to over yonder, Giles Road. And there's a horse trader over there. We went over there to buy a horse. Roy is in there dicking with the guy about the horse. He says, Jim, you stay out of this, you don't know anything about horse trading. This little boy, about this high, big overalls, came out on that step, and he looks around and he pulls out of his pocket Red Man chewing tobacco. And he actually put a chaw in his mouth, you know. And he sat there chewing and spitting. I couldn't believe it. Anyhow, Roy bought this horse, had a watch eye. One of his eyes was white in it. This horse had the same personality that Jerry had. Jerry did not want a horse in front of him. This horse didn't want a horse in front of him. We got him home. Mr. Giles, or whatever his name was, brought that horse to us. Hitched it up, and we had a field of corn across the road. Hitched it to a cultivator. Roy says, I'll take him down first. And I want to tell you, those horses, sparks flew. Roy yeah, gets down on the other end. They had to stop because the railroad fence is there. Pulls him around and comes back. And he finally got to the road and he gets him stopped. He says, oh, Jim, I think I've got him trained now. You can Well, he went to the house and I cultivated the rest of that 12 acres there. And when I got done, the horses were lathered up, and so was I. They were 13. John Whitney, he said that team of horses could pull the barn downtown. Now, in the spring of the year, or come haying season, we mowed with a team of horses. We then let it set a day, dry out, and we took a dump rake. And we used a dump rake to make windrows of hay. And then if it was wet or anything, we had to tether, hitch onto the horses and dry it out and stack it up. And then when everything was dry, we'd stack that hay up in mounds, hay mounds, like they did back in the 17th century, 16th. And then we'd come out the next day with the wagon team, wagon and team, and load it up. And up there, my good God. We'd bring it into the barn. The horses would be there in the barn with that wagon load of hay. We used the tractor. We'd pull the hay off the wagon with the tractor. That's the only thing we used the tractor for outside of plowing. Now, we did plow with a tractor, but that tractor didn't do much at all, just the horses. Until a while, I learned a little later, it's not the way to run the railroad, Roy. I had not too hard a time. The next year, he and George Stetler and another fella, three of them, bought a hay baler. One swell foop. We went from the 19th century to this. Around right there. And I want to tell you, it was so much easier and faster and all that. I will say this though, about mowing away hay. You get up towards the top of the barn, and all those shingles were wooden shingles. You were nailed. You were nailed. And as you got up towards the top and you're mowing away the hay, boy, you should have wore a safety helmet or something, because those nails, God,
He never had a hay loader?
he did not have it, never had a hay loader. The two previous farms, the three farms that I worked at had a hay loader.
He didn't have one. He went right from Lucé to Baylor. Huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
You know, I thought that was preposterous. But, you know, I talked to him all the rest of that year. And they cost a lot of money.
Mhm.
Yeah, they do. there was several other things that, but as I say, we used the tractor for plowing. And I finally did persuade him that we could use the tractor for mowing hay. He sat on the mowing machine, and I drive the tractor. It was, you had a mowing machine here, you might as well fix it up somehow, and it worked.
What make was the tractor, Jim?
That was an Alice Chalmers
Oh, yeah.
Model C.
When they first came out, or nearly when they first.
Yeah, well, they had come out prior to World War II,
Mm.
38, 39. This is about a 49, 1950, it's relatively new.
Oh, okay.
And I learned how to use that tractor well. I mean, I did a lot of plowing. There was a night, today, spring plowing, like I say, we stopped work at 6 o'clock. That was it. Well, they had to go to Eastern Star. So I got back on the tractor and I finished plowing that field because they promised bad weather and I wanted to get that field plowed. And I got that field plowed. And the next day, Roy saw I was all plowed and he said, "What did I tell you about working afterwards? You don't work after supper." Well, I'm sorry, sir. But I did it several times. The next year, we got that baler, and it was so different. But there was one little problem. The hay bales didn't take up anywhere near as much room as this hay. We had to go down the lower part of the barn where the cows were. You had to prop that up. We had to prop it up because the beams were sagging. That was pretty tough. Come fall, it's silo filling time. And I want to tell you, you go from Elmer Kellogg's down below where I am now, to our place, to Bell Festivals, to, what's the feller's name? He had 3 daughters.
Oh, Pontiacs.
Polaniacs.
Oh, yeah.
Pontiacs.
Yeah, who also had an Alice Chalmers Model C. I just see we probably, I broke that tractor twice. And it was my fault. You come out of the sugar bush after maple syrup season's over, and the water had run down through there and runs right down behind the bank here, Candor, in the spring of the year. But anyhow, the water froze. You got ice here, and then you got water. You got ice here. Well, the bull wheels of that tractor just fit down there, and you go like this. I didn't have chains on a tractor, but if you work those bull wheels just right, they'll both of them work in unison, and they'll pull that tractor up out. Only this time, I'm watching behind me. I've got that sled full of stuff, pails, and all of a sudden I'm conscious. I turn around. I had gotten that perfect, that tractor, the front end of that tractor was coming up like that. It was on its way backwards, and I pushed in the clutch and the tractor come down. Wham!
Snap.
There was no frame on that engine, the transmission. Broke that transmission housing. I didn't feel too good about that. We had a hill, we had land up on Dewey Road, and we planted oats up there. I should say also, we got a pasture up there. We bring the calves, young stock, dry cows up there in the beginning of the year. We have to build a fence around there, but they thrived there. They ran with the deer. They learned how to run with the deer. Come fall, when you had to round them up and bring them back down. Oh. I mean, they hurt a lot when they slam against you. They don't want to get out of that crap. Oh. That was one part I really didn't get hurt. But anyhow, we had oats up there, and we got Harley Ferguson up there with his threshing machine. And Dave Thomas, who worked for Quinn's up the road, he was sort of free and he was willing to work with us. He had a pickup truck. We're up there thrashing oats, and we've got a lot of oats on the hay wagon. he's got bolts on his truck. We get it all done. Bobby Kellogg, now this is young Bobby Kellogg who went to school with me. His father at one time had a big farm up on the road out of Wilsonville. Yeah. But anyhow, the Ellis Chalmers seat was quite wide. It was very different for a tractor. Bobby and I rode together. Here's a score. Now, I'll do the steering and so forth, and you work the brakes. We get to the top of the hill, Tuttle Hill, to go down on the hill. And I got it in high gear, and got it wide open, but it's still not going very fast.
Take it out of gear.
So, gear, don't burn so much gas in. Bobby, you run the brakes. We passed Dave Thomas on the way down. We get down there, we're going by Foster's farm, and we're going by Bolton's farm. And now we're slowing down on that long stretch. And as we're slowing down, there's smoke rolling out of the axle of the motor. So the brakes, Bobby burned the brakes. And Dave Thomas passes us and he stops. What are you guys doing? He just he chewed. Well, of course, too late then. I bought new brakes for that tractor. I did. Got my easily $15 a week allowance, so I bought the brakes. And there's a lot of things like that. I shot my first deer when I was 15 years old. Over in the pasture, there were several apple trees, and those deer came down to the apple trees. I went over there to the sap house. We had a sap house then. I'm in that sap house. That deer, and I shot about 60 woodchucks that year. That deer, nice 6.8 point, it was an 8 point. I got the rack yet. Coming on there, he lifted his head up, center that, got right in the eyeballs. I go, bam! Man, I'm happy. I go back to the house and I think, Roy, I gotta take the tractor out, drag the deer out. Drag what? Well, number one, we didn't have a freezer. Got a locker flank, but no freezer. Number two, Roy said, I don't have a license, you don't have a license. You're a ward of the county. I'm responsible. If they ever find out about this deer, I'm the one that's gonna pay, blah, 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 blah. He made me go back over there and drag that deer into the sap house, dig the dirt out, and cut it there, and bury the guts. And then drag it back after it was dark. And in the shop of the garage, strung it up, and he sat there while I took the hide off, while I cut that whole deer up in chunks. And Georgia canned all that deer. It was great eating.
Absolutely.
It was and Roy never let up. He just chewed. But he's a good man. Roy had done a lot of shooting in his younger days. He had a shotgun reloading outfit. He was a great trap shooter. He gave me his Syracuse double, which I still have. But anyhow, he and I would go hunting, and we had some pretty good times. He could shoot better than I could at that time. With a shotgun. I was 22 though. But I really enjoyed hunting with him up there. The Dewey Road was sort of wilderness. It was.
Still is.
Yeah. It's still sort of rough too.
Yeah.
Two springs on the one side of the road. Springs, I say wells. And I tell you, one of them had the coldest water you could ever imagine. It was. But meanwhile, back to Roy, Georgia. We had a dog, Tippy. Tippy weighed about 70 pounds, farm dog, a typical farm dog. And I learned when playing with Tippy, I'd wear heavy leather gloves. I'd put a stick, throw him around, and he'd get that, throw the stick, bring the stick back, and he'd wrestle me. It was a great, great dog. Roy, whenever he went downtown, he'd tie the dog inside the truck. There came the day when the dog, Roy went into the bank, which is now the library there. He went into the bank, came back out, the windows rolled down. Tippy was asleep or half asleep. And he heard Roy on the door. He come up there, wham, he got Roy right here. Roy wanted to kill the dog, and Georgia wouldn't let him. But Roy was careful after that. There's so many things, I probably should have taken notes. I will pass this little book around, it's sort of screwy, but there's stuff of interest here. Old pictures. Roy was at Mickey Clear. He took a lot of pictures back in the era when the island, in the creek right across the farm. What was the name of that island? Haynes Island. It was a recreational area. And people came from 96B onto that island, and they picnicked and camped and whatever. And there's some pictures in there of a bunch of people, and you can tell they were having fun. I don't know what they had. Oh, speaking of fun, as I say, Roy was diabetic. He shouldn't have been in the Millstream Inn. He had in his earlier days made elderberry wine. I mean, crates of elderberry wine. And they were down cellar. He couldn't drink them. Jim and Doug and Dave and anybody else, Charlie Todd, on our senior trip to Washington. Ron Doherty, senior trip to Washington, I had one suitcase of all elderberry wine. Now, as a passage of time, you know, that elderberry wine diminished in quantity. I have to throw that out because, you know, it was myself and my buddies that drank it. Years go by, Carol and I get married, started having kids. We made, Carol and I did some dandelion wine. This is when we lived further up the road where Gutka used to live. And we had that dandelion wine in the cupboard, and Doug was probably a year old. He's in the living room anyhow, we hear this bang, bang, pop, pop, pop. We went, and Doug is looking up at the cupboard where that wine was. It had exploded. And it's drizzling down there. Not all of it. Well, we took that wine with us when we moved downtown, when we moved to the house on Main Street, and we had it there. And then when we moved back to the farm, we put wine there. And there was a fair amount of dandelion wine. It was good wine. Doug did the same thing to me I did to Roy. He sneaked that wine out, and he and his buddies, they took someplace and drank. I digress. Too many things like that went on.
Was Roy a native? Where did Roy come from?
Yes, let me, thank you, Howard. He was born around 1882, I think, thereabouts, to Bartley Coursen. Bartley, and I can't remember her name. And that Coursen name, if you ever had any of the maps of Watkins and Flint Purchase, where they divided up into squares, you will find in that lower left-hand corner of that map, get on the Kelsey Road, you'll find the name Coursen. You'll also find the name Chidsey. Georgia was a Chidsey. They lived in the house where the dentist is now. But their names were Chidsey and Smith, and they went back to the early 1800s also. Bartley Coursen, Roy's father, died relatively young, in his early 50s. His mother lived into the 80s, for what that's worth.
Oh, they were down on the Kelsey Road?
I would not say, I don't know. The names are on the Kelsey Road, along the Kelsey Road.
Oh, okay.
That's all I can say.
When did he die? Roy?
61, I believe, thereabouts. This is just a group picture. Like I say, Roy took a lot of pictures. The only one I really recognize is Georgia. She was a very beautiful woman. Very
Strange Corners has got some courses.
They do, I don't doubt that, yes, they should.
Did they have children?
They never had any children.
You were it, huh?
I should have addressed that, yes. They had, over a period of years before I got there, they had 3 other foster children. The last one they had was Albert Ellis. The one before was Henry Hollenbeck. Henry Hollenbeck married Rachel Meadow of the Meadows. And Henry lived here for quite a while. He had 2 children. Anyhow, Henry and I inherited the farm. We took care of them in their declining years. And of course, our children loved them. I mean, really, my children just looked forward to going up there to Roy and George's. And I guess they enjoyed the children because they didn't say no. I gotta tell you, Roy wanted to, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7:30 was when the Lone Ranger came on the radio. We listened to the Lone Ranger. And on those Wednesday nights when he had to go down to Masonic Lodge, he'd have to leave earlier because he had to be there by 8 o'clock. He said, make sure you listen to this, I want to know how it turns out. He really was. Their closest friends were Judge Turk, Nate Turk and Sarah and Catherine. They would come up to our place Saturday nights or whatever, play bridge. Or we would go down to Sarah's place, play bridge. I would go with them, and sometime during the course of the evening, I would go down to Kelly's and get ice cream and bring it back, because after they got playing bridge, we always had to have ice cream. It was very neat, especially when I got my driver's license and I could drive. That's quite another story. And I always marveled at this game of bridge. It was beyond me. It isn't now. I learned how to play. That's another story. There was the evening that I was studying. And understand, I studied. I got good grades. I wanted to, because Roy and George just sort of thought that, well, if you're good, you can get away with a lot. I sat there reading something, and I ran across a word that I didn't know what was. You gotta understand, I learned very early to find out what words mean. I won't go into details on that, but I ran across the word profligate. And I said, excuse me, does anybody know what the word profligate means? And Nate, Mr. Turkey, you don't know what that means, huh, Jimmy? No, sir. Let me preface this a little bit. At that stage of the game, 16, 17, I swore very little. Us guys didn't swear very much at all. We did not, and we never swore in front of women. That was not one of the things you did. Women were up here. Well, no, sir, I don't know what the word means. And he says, well, it means a perfect son of a bitch. I was mortified. I just shrunk right down. And I never, ever asked anybody what it was. My nose. Oh, Roy and Georgia helped me buy a 1937 Plymouth Coupe. I was the first guy in my class to have his own car. Everybody else used their daddy's car. I was lucky. I was a foster child. I was lucky.
Everybody else rode a bicycle or walked.
Oh, did you guys? Yeah. Did you really? I should say, we had about 25 milking head, a bull for breeding. We had 300 hens. We always raised pigs. And one year I raised rabbits. That was gonna be my big money maker. That was not a money maker. Years later, my daughters wanted a horse. Daddy, we got 3 stalls down there for horses. Can't we have a horse? Tell you what, I'll start you off on rabbits. If you can do the rabbit bet, make it down on it. We'll see about it. Ended up, Daddy took care of the rabbits. Well, Roy in his 1937 Dodge, he says he bought it from Charlie Hills down in Owego for $660. And not only that, Mr. Hills pulled a tank up before he left the place. Brand new car and a full tank of gas.
Wow.
Georgia's only living relative was her sister who came from Coursen. She had married Horry K. George. He was a big wheel in Wickwire Industries up there. He had been a pilot. He had this beautiful, I don't know what year it was, 1950 Packard sedan. They had one child and that child died. It was too bad. Now, Horry K. George's brother was the guy that founded the Georgia Junior Republic. I don't know what his first name was, but he was a good guy. Let me just, yes. And I'm getting towards the end here.
Jim, how old were you when you came?
I was 13, but I turned 14 in February, and 13 in January. I turned 14. I'm sorry, I should have had notes.
What do they do with their eggs? 300 chickens, a lot of chickens.
We shipped them.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we processed eggs.
Sell any locally or?
I can't honestly answer the question, but I think it would be too many for locally.
No, any, like you did the milk, I mean.
I honestly can't answer that question. No doubt we did.
Yeah,
Anybody know the name Bessie Brome?
sure,
You do?
yeah.
She lived up the road.
She was the original Avon lady.
Yeah. Essentially, yes. She was a nice lady.
Fred was one of our best customers.
I was a customer. They had good hair stuff with the kid stuff in it,
What happened?
lanolin.
Roy had a nickname for me, Boykins. I don't know where it came from. I never heard of it before or since.
What was it? Boykins.
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 Oh, I should tell you about silo filling time when the women, all the families got together and they made all this food for us. Big, long tables. We'd come in and eat, fill up on that, and barely move to get back on that. Oh, Lord. Well, we're down to Kellogg's farm, and because Mr. Kellogg, Elmer Kellogg, didn't have any children my age to help out like Roy did, and like Ralph Estel had Charlie Estel. And what's the daughter's name up the road there? Laniak had 3 stout daughters. And you probably remember, don't you?
Oh, sure.
Anyhow, we're throwing silo, and I don't know if you're familiar with how this machine works, but it goes real fast, and you feed the corn into it, and the corn gets chopped up, it goes up this pipe. You've seen those pipes on silos. It gets sent up there at a great amount of speed and goes into the silo. Well, one time, Doug Pesner and I are sort of fooling around there as we're feeding this corn into the chopper, and all of a sudden, wham! Roy Coursen come up behind us, and he hit our heads together so hard. I mean, he just about dropped us to our knees. He says, "You boys want to fool around, go out the road. You're safer off out there. Don't fool around that corn chopper." Serious.
Did you have to pitch the insulage out of the silo? Was that one of your jobs?
That was, of course it was. Pitch insulage down?
Yeah.
Hell, in the morning, the insulage first, then you put the grain on the insulage,
Right?
and then the hay.
Yeah.
But while they were eating insulage, you milked them, okay?
Right.
And, yeah, they did that.
Did you have to put a little salt on the
Never.
grain? No,
Never.
no salt. Yeah.
One of the things, though, in the grain, and they used to do this all over, they put molasses in the grain. And at this one farm over in Merrick Valley, there was 4 of us boys, and we would take that chunks of molasses and hay grain out and suck the molasses out of the grain. Oh, that was candy. No, that was just
There was one time they used to put their own molasses in. They had a barrel of molasses there. Drill it out.
Oh yeah, Doug Pheasant, what a clown, yeah. Well, we get to where, nobody's looking, and take a spoon, of potatoes, across one guy's shoulder onto Doug's head, or vice versa. We Deer season.
So
yeah.
what time did you start chores in the morning?
Got up at 5:30, started things around, always started milking at 6. And we were over by 7 to 7:30 time frame.
Then you ate breakfast?
And then ate breakfast, changed clothes, went to school.
That farm is so clean, you never know if you've done chores before you came to school.
Yeah.
You never
Yeah.
knew if you came to
Oh, and all the years that I farmed it there, I mean, the cleanliness was a major factor, especially in milk production.
Yeah.
They always had clean straw, and they never watered in their own manure.
You walked in a house, you never knew it was a farmhouse.
One case of mastitis in 1/4 of one cow because the cow next door stepped on her udder. But that was easily treated then. That in the 5 years, I guess it was, that I was there. That wasn't too bad a record. Yeah, back then incidentally, deer season was only 1 week long. I'm hunting up on that hill, a side hill behind my place, in 1951, and it was a cold season that year, awfully cold in November and December. But I remember being up there, and the train, came by on the track there, and guess what? It was not the train I was used to. The whistle blew. Oh, it wasn't a whistle. It wasn't a train whistle.
It was a horn.
I was infuriated. I wanted to shoot the damn thing. But, oh yeah, maple syrup season. John Lore. Anybody hear about John Lore?
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
He's a big guy. And he loaned me his
Storyteller.
chainsaw. Huh?
storyteller.
Oh God, can you tell a story? Oh, you say, oh, that's another story. That's another story. But anyhow, he loaned me his chainsaw. Now those early chainsaws weighed about 75 pounds. I swear they did. I had a huge pile of wood over there with a sap house. And I used this. Pretty soon I take the jacket off, shirt off, I'm down my t-shirt. It's 20 degrees outside. And I'm sweating, oh God. It was great. That sap house was an education too. I just loved doing maple syrup. And we did that for quite a long time. Nancy and Butch helped us a couple of times.
So we retired, didn't have any more time.
Because were you the one, were you guys there? No, that was down in Sheen, wasn't it? When maple syrup spilled and went all over the floor?
Fortunately, we were not.
I would not admit it if I was.
I don't blame you.
Sticky mess in the kitchen, it was in the kitchen. and they couldn't get it off. Oh, God.
Marilyn, Just to finish it off in the kitchen.
Anyhow, as I said, Roy was a lot on taking pictures from his early age on up. And I could not find my good pictures of Roy and George. I hunted all over for, we had 10,000 slides in that house, you know, colored slides. And there are a couple of pictures of Roy and George in there.
So, you lived there all through high school, Jim?
Yes, I should probably amplify on that a little bit too. Yes, and I lived there for a year afterwards. The Korean War ensued. I had always had the crazy idea I was going to join the Air Force, fly jets. And I first went up to Sampson, and I was passing all the aviation cadet tests. That was, I went up there, I shouldn't get ahead of myself. When I told Roy and Georgia that I wanted to go into the service, that meant we had to get rid of the cows and the horses. And, well, Roy was about 67 or 8 then, and he wasn't in the best of health. But we bit the bullet and got rid of the cows. And anyhow, stopped farming it. He rented the land out a little, but not much. I went up to Sampson, and they made me a permanent party because while I'm there training, a bunch of old guys come in. You know, they have mustaches, you know, in their late 20s. They had been recalled to active duty in the Civil War because of the Korean War. And as long as they were physically fit, if they were a pilot or a navigator, they were subject to recall to active duty until age 55 if they were recalled. And I said, whoa, I don't want to do that. I went up to headquarters and said, give me those papers back. You can't do that, think it over. They made me think it over for about a year and a half up there, 2 years almost. They kept me there. Finally, they gave up on me and they shipped me overseas to Philippine Islands. But I only spent 4 years in the Air Force. I did not become a jet driver. But I wanted to. Oh, you know, right across from where the farm is Payne's Island. One time there, this is back when I was in high school, there was a humongous beaver mound there. The beavers are actually there then. Clara Strong. Yeah. Did I tell you about Clara Strong? Well, she and I, we really got along quite well. But, there was a day came that she wanted us to write on something or something. I sat there and I could not. So I wrote on the paper, sorry, no inspiration. Turned the paper in. Got the paper back the next day, and a big red zero. She says, sorry, no mark either. Right off the library, you know, there's that little room. And if you open up the one door, it goes out on the hall. Seniors and juniors always have a little problem. But anyhow, you got these rubber bands, paper things, you know. I know Jerry Amon's coming around there. So I go in there and I'm going to wait. He's going to open that door because he wants to sneak into our room there, the library. I'm ready. The door opens. It's Clara Strong. I do a freeze act. She says, oh, you're going to shoot me right now. Oh, I should tell you, that 22 that Roy gave me, I jumped over a fence and I broke the stock. Stupid thing to do, but I broke the stock. I think I was a senior in high school. I undertook to make a gun stock for that 22. And Stanley Oaks was our teacher, and he says, I haven't got any books on it. Don't start it, you'll never finish it. Well, I think I will. John Whitney, who at that time lived down the Coursen Road just a little bit there, he gave me a chunk of, what kind of wood is that? Make fence posts out of?
Locust.
Locust?
Locust. He says it had sat up in that barn 30 years.
Yeah.
Was it hard?
It would test the metal.
Boy, that stuff is, I'll tell you.
But I took that chunk of wood and I made a gun stock. You've seen it, you've seen it. And it's beautiful, and it's functional.
It's functional, yeah.
You've never made anything like that. Yeah, Mr. Oaks put that in the window, back when the Canada Courier was in business, they always displayed the shop stuff that us kids had. I didn't get that thing back until about the latter part of May, and the checks were out. And I wanted my 22 back, and I got it back. And it is a work of art.
It's functional.
Okay, let's see.
You won't have to worry about it breaking, though.
No, that's for
Probably
sure.
won't rot either.
And it is beautiful. I should have brought it with me. I should have. Just so you get jealous. I think that I probably talked enough.
Jim, how'd you end up at IBM?
Now, that's not about the Coursen fund.
Most of this hasn't been.
These people here came to hear about life and the Coursen fund. Did I tell you that when you got the haying done, you went down to the lower dam and you jumped in the water there? That was a neat
Oh,
place.
boy.
You remember?
Oh, do
She used to teach life saving down there.
There's a rope off that one tree.
Yeah.
You go up that tree and swing out on that rope and jump in. I'll tell you, that felt good.
I? Sure did.
And then you went back and milked the cows and went out hunting woodchucks, that's all. I don't know if you really want to, I will tell you. In the service, they made me a personnel specialist, whatever the heck that is. And one of the things is office procedures, and I learned how to operate a mimeograph machine. And all that kind of stuff. When I went hired on to IBM, oh, you've got that kind of experience. Send me to reproductions. So I went over there and Ken Rounds.
Yeah.
I started working for him, and he says, well, to make a long story short, you don't belong here. You belong in contracts. So that's how, only because I knew how to operate a mimeograph. But I digress, it was Helen Risley's fault.
Go back to the service, yeah.
Because Helen Risley came to school to teach. I was 17. All of a sudden, a lot of us guys started taking business courses. I mean, she comes in with Bob Risley, and she's beautiful. She has no children. What's wrong, Bob? We don't know. But we're all willing to. And but because I learned how to type, that's why they put me in the order room. They had a job for me. The mimeograph was only a small part of it. I knew how to type. And wait for the paperwork to get through to send me to aviation cadet school, which I was not going to go to, and I didn't. That's all there was to that. But that's how I come to work at IBM, how I come to work in contracts, program office management, and all that crap.
How about the degree in writing?
Well, that came much later.